Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you on a beautiful Friday. I hope you're having a great day. Happy Warrants Dividend Day to the Gamestop community. Happy Taylor Swift official launch party to the AMC community and the Swifties. And just happy Friday. Cheers to everybody. So, saw the GameStop filing and wanted to take a look myself. Obviously, that had some market impact on the stock. Up for debate always on what is sort of organic stock movement, what is manipulated stock movement. Not going to get into that so much today. Just going to talk about the filing itself and maybe just a minor bit of speculation at the end of this, but want to go through. If you're more finding this video because you're from the GameStop community and you're like, who's this dude? I've been here the whole ride for more obviously AMC. Many of my followers are AMC folks. I think there's enough of us who left behind all the old divisions long ago. So I'm glad you're here. One thing I do for the AMC community in particular, but have done for a few other stocks as well. Strategy might be a good example. Have talked a lot about Bitcoin. I'll go through sometimes filings and just try to put some things into plain English. So that's what I'm going to do today. Just taking a look at the GameStop filing, the shelf registration you may have seen. And on X, I kind of said, this is basically a filing of everything and the kitchen sink. I mean that in a positive way. So we're going to talk about that and just kind of look at what does this mean. And so without further ado, let's just get right into that. There is a variety of instruments, all that you would find in this filing. I always recommend, I say no trust me bros around here. Go look at the SEC filing itself. You can find that on GameStop's investor relations site. You can go to the SEC Edgar site and find that. And that's all I'm going to kind of talk through and summarize here in this video. Shouldn't be too long of a video. So you'll see you've got, I said preferred stock here, but actually I should have also said common stock. So common and preferred stock we'll talk about. You guys will all know what that is already. Debt securities, depository shares, warrants, purchase contracts, units, and subscription rights. All of this is in the filing. And so we're just going to kind of pick apart, well, what the heck's going on? The first thing that you see in the filing that obviously you guys already know about, so I won't spend much time here. But just in case not everybody knows, so on the common stock, GameStop has 1 billion shares authorized, of which 448 million-ish are outstanding. So there's about 552 million. Technically, GameStop could offer more common stock into the market. Certainly, we haven't seen that since last year around the time Kitty was around, and RC brought in quite a bit of cash and has since flipped a lot of that into Bitcoin. That's pretty fantastic. My followers know that I'm very, very high on Bitcoin, so I love seeing that. By the way, pause on that. I mean, if you've not seen, Bitcoin's been running pretty hard, and I did post on X today that I think GameStop is up around, well, at the time I posted, was up around maybe $71 million in total on that, the 4,710 Bitcoin coins. And so I will not be surprised at all if over the next few months Bitcoin runs pretty hard, by end of year, and GameStop will be up even further. So that ought to be adding value into the stock. I love to see that. And yeah, my followers know I'm very high on Bitcoin. So as far as preferred stock, GameStop has 5 million shares authorized. And what you would see in this filing that will probably ring a bell for a lot of AMC apes is GameStop has the authority to offer the preferred shares in different series with different rights and different benefits. Now just think through like Michael Saylor and the strategy, or formerly known as MicroStrategy, what they've been doing, where they've got different offerings kind of coming from their preferred equity, and they can give different dividend rates to those, interest rates, varying. You can even vary like voting rights. So every time a company offers preferred stock, there are certain boundaries to what they can do, but it's just not vanilla. It's not like here's the preferred stock and it always acts the same way. They can offer that in a variety of series, like I said, with different interest rates, dividends, at different voting rights. And so I will not be surprised if Ryan Cohen basically has in his pocket, let's say, the opportunity to take some action here. And I guess I'm starting to wonder. I mean, my gut reaction in DMs to a friend or two was kind of like, hey, I kind of wonder if he's he said he's had his own strategy, right? Remember when he went on television and kind of talked through, and he said GameStop's got its own strategy, not necessarily strategy's strategy or Saylor's strategy. But I guess my point would be I'm not going to be too surprised if GameStop becomes a bit of a financial offering company and then uses those financial offerings to continue to uh, build value into the company. And so I think if you believe in Ryan Cohen, so it's funny timing. Just the other day, might have even just been yesterday, I happened to stumble on and rewatched about 9 or 10 minutes of Kitty's live from last year. And I think Kitty said, if you don't think Ryan Cohen's a doofus, then you might believe in what he's going to be doing. So I'll just put it that way, that I will not be surprised if Ryan Cohen has some plans on how he's going to make some offerings to the marketplace and sort of find win-win solutions where, like, take Saylor, and he had this big offering to like Allianz. Well, Allianz is like one of the biggest financial and insurance companies in the entire world. Well, they won by getting sort of more volatility and a return on their investment in terms of interest. Strategy won, and Strategy's investors won in terms of bringing in capital, which they turned into Bitcoin. And so there are some win-win opportunities to sort of build capital and then use that capital on your strategy. And so we'll see what Ryan Cohen's doing there, but that's what's up with the preferred stock, in my opinion. Take a look more into the different offerings of strategy, the company, if you want to kind of understand that farther. So then there was more. If you look in the filing, you've got debt. I'm just putting kind of in quotes here, unlimited. So that's actually in the filing. Basically, if GameStop wants to issue debt, they have the authority. The board and Ryan Cohen, have the authority to do so. And so just think of like a tool chest, and they're putting all the tools in the tool chest and just saying we're keeping the right to use every avenue at our discretion. And so that's mostly how I read this filing. It's just them saying we're keeping all our options open. And so they can offer debt. But now remember, we just talked about sort of buying some Bitcoin and doing other things. I'm sure it took some money to implement the vault, the power pack strategy. Well, that was probably good use of money. Sure seems like it's had some energy and probably some revenue generating, even though it's perhaps in beta mode still, but it just has been a lot of fun to watch, and I won't be surprised if that continues to grow. And so, there'll be some opportunities to bring in capital and use that. And so think about the convertible debt then that was used, which I believe was at zero interest. So that was really awesome. Maybe some could argue that is that dilutive, but the thing is, you're bringing in capital, you're using that capital. It's you got the cash up front to start building value. Some of that value was in those 4,710 Bitcoin that are now owned and at 0% interest. And then eventually the people who own that convertible debt become longs in your stock. It just feels like there's a lot of maybe positives there to me. So I kind of am watching what's happening there, and that makes sense to me. And so it just, honestly, I think what I'm just seeing is GameStop, again, all respect to Ryan Cohen. I'm not saying he's copying Saylor, but I'm saying there are similarities in terms of, okay, there's an approach to bringing in capital from all over different markets and then deploying that capital to build value. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. So then the next offering is depository shares. So AMC apes will remember that. So that's why I've kind of given an example here. Depository shares can kind of be used. This is in the filing. You would see this language can be used as portions of a preferred stock. So like with AMC ape, that was 100 to 1. AMC apes will remember AMC ape. And that was 100 to 1, and it was representing basically preferred equity, but it was eventually convertible to common stock, and it had voting rights. Now, that's a key distinction because a lot of times preferred equity does not have voting rights in a company, whereas these depository shares can often have voting rights. And so you would see that as a distinction. Although I'll just go back real quick, look at the language again, different series, different rights, different benefits on preferred stock. The board would have the authority. I'm sure this is in the charter, and the bylaws and all of that, that the board has the authority to grant certain rights on the preferred share. So I'm not saying preferred can never have voting rights. Like I said, with these depository shares, we did in AMC. You could see that in GameStop if these are ever used. But I am just saying it's unusual for preferred equity to have voting rights. So that's kind of something that sometimes you'll see showing up here. Then the other thing you'll see in the GameStop filing today is the warrants. Don't have to cover that too much. I've got a whole video on the warrants. Go find that if you want. I'm sure many others who are far deeper in GameStop have been talking about it all over Reddit and YouTube and X. And we've already just seen those recently. That's going to be fun next week for all of us to see those show up. I buckled in and wanted to be on that ride. So I've got some warrants coming, and that will be fun to kind of see how those play out. All right, so there are a few others, and these get a little more complicated. So I've made some slides for 3 of these. We'll get into in a moment, but just to cover what else GameStop has at its disposal. So the first thing is purchase contracts. So I'm just going to give you some language, kind of if you go Google this and sort of research this a little bit. But a purchase contract would kind of obligate holders to purchase or sell, obligate GameStop to sell or purchase a specified or varying number of debt or equity securities. So just think about GameStop can basically make a basket of goods. A lot of us probably kind of shudder when we talk about baskets. We've all talked about kind of derivatives and how those are used against us, and swaps and baskets and all the different things. Cross-asset trading and various things. So I'm not going to get into that here, but GameStop now could make some baskets of offerings, whether that's debt, whether that's equity, whatever that looks like, all these different things we're talking about here in this video, and then can have these purchase contracts for sort of buying and selling. Now, I'll just give you one small example of that again, maybe just simplifies it, makes it understandable. AMC had a forward contract with Goldman. That was a contract. That was a purchase contract. We did that kind of the end of last year. And so that would just be, I think, someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert on these, but I think that would be an example of a purchase contract. So that I just brought that out. But let's keep going. So let's cover the rest on their own slide. So unit offerings, basically a unit offering, you can kind of, again, sort of that basket language again, you could offer multiple sort of different components sold together. So here's an example. I just pulled off a screenshot off the internet. Maybe common stock and warrants. So like we all just are getting the warrants, but what if there was an offering to buy bundles of, okay, you get X amount of shares and X amount of warrants when you buy this. So that could be a unit offering. That's just an example. So some other examples, SPACs tend to use this. A lot of you might have heard of those where they might offer some common stock and warrants together. And by the way, I just brought that up because some people are wondering, and not that we all love Cramer. Let's be honest, we don't. There's not a lot of love there for the way he's treated both AMC and GameStop. But Cramer had kind of talked about, is GameStop sort of becoming a SPAC in a way? Does it have all this capital at its disposal to do what it wants with? Well, in a way, I guess I kind of get the point on that. So that's why I brought that example out. If you look at just general, like kind of public company offerings, you can see other language that's kind of making this consistent. Hybrid security. So you can just see again, common stock, preferred stock, warrants, debt instruments. This is just kind of combining it together and then offering it in distinct units. Like, all right, for every one of these units, you're getting this amount of stock, this amount of debt, and this amount of warrants, something like that. And so it's defined, and then you can kind of buy those units. All right, so then the next one was subscription rights. So subscription rights a little bit different from warrants, but you're going to see some similar language to warrants. So top right of the slide, I've kind of given you a little bit of a difference. Subscription rights, as far as my DD is saying, hey, these are typically shorter term, might even be discounted stock, and it tends to be to only the existing shareholders. So the company might come and say, listen, we're going to be selling shares into the market, so we're going to give you kind of first cut at these. If you want to buy, X many shares, because you already own a certain amount of shares. So that way we're not diluting you in a way. You could keep your same ownership of the company. It brings in money to the company, but lets the existing shareholders have kind of first crack at not being diluted in a way. Sort of buy your way into keeping the same amount of the company. But it can be at a discount. And then also what you would see if you do a little research is it's probably shorter time horizons. Whereas warrants might be to a bigger group. It's not necessarily to existing shareholders, which again, go back to my warrants video, but real quick, I'll cover like what was kind of interesting about these warrants as a dividend. They are offered to existing shareholders. So that was kind of I thought a positive way to approach that by Ryan and the board. And so generally, though, warrants can be sold out to, not just existing shareholders, and they might be longer term. Some warrants can be many years. Obviously, the GameStop warrants in this case 1 year, but we will see in the future if more could be offered. And then what's more is they're kind of at a set target price, whereas, like I said, the subscription rights can be kind of at the market or maybe even at a discount. And then finally, we've got book entry securities. And I'm just going to pull up and summarize. We're kind of already there, guys. Book entry securities. So just kind of interesting that instead of delivering like a certificate, maybe normal through like a transfer agent and into your broker and all of that, these are sort of booked directly on the books of an issuer or a transfer agent, and then kind of eliminates, the certificates. Some examples, one of these you guys will definitely recognize, but some examples: treasury securities, direct investment plans, and then direct registered shares, DRS. So GameStop kind of holding the right to kind of put some shares out there and just immediately direct register those. That's kind of book entry. All right, so let's just pull up. Here's the summary of what I believe is going on. So I just read this as, in a way, Ryan and the board saying, hey, dear marketplace, we are keeping all of the tools available to ourselves, and sort of, by the way, shorts, you better be ready. You can see my third bullet, keeping shorts on their toes. We are going to continue to bring in capital. And then, of course, he's keeping his cards close to the vest. He's not telling us how he's going to deploy that capital. So I'll go back to Kitty's point of, if you don't think he's a doofus, if you think he's going to do a good job using the capital to deliver shareholder value, then that's just the question you ask yourself. And so it's clear that GameStop is saying, we're going to be bringing in capital and we're going to keep all the tools available to us and not limit ourselves. That's how I read that. So it doesn't seem it doesn't honestly seem, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. In a way, it's almost, I don't know, vanilla or plain Jane. It's like they're just filing a filing that says we can do all the things that we have the right to do, right? But I guess the point is, by actually doing this filing, certainly there's signal in it, right? They're not doing this for nothing. So they're signaling to the market, they're signaling to us, the shareholders, that there are things coming, and be prepared. I suppose that's how I read that. Pardon me, little frog in my throat. Okay, so then I would just say this is directly to the GameStop community. Obviously, I've been more of an AMC ape, but I really believe in unity. I believe in the fight of the retail shareholders. So I just want to share with you my personal outlook, and this is just matching an X post I put out there today. I would just say, clearly, with such a large pile of cash, there is a lot of room for optimism. I do not think Ryan Cohen is the type of person who's just going to sit there and do nothing. So I am sure there are conversations that have been happening. There are strategies that are unfurling, and there are boardrooms where discussions are being had. So the amount of cash available in the billions means that big moves can be had when the time is right and when the deals are right. The fact that Bitcoin is running significantly, I kind of mentioned that earlier. Kind of approached all-time highs today, gotten close. Like I said, at one point when I posted on X today, I think GameStop was up $71 million on its Bitcoin position. And I really believe Bitcoin is going to run pretty radically over the next months and certainly over years. And so I would just, if I was you, I'd be doing a lot of DD on Bitcoin and why I'm so bullish and why I think you should be. You could even start with, find a video from me on debasement. That is just a good start to understand what debasement is, what the Federal Reserve does to you, what the politicians do to you, and how they devalue your currency. All right, so Bitcoin, though, running would be bullish for GameStop. Power packs, I'm loving watching what's going on with the vault and the energy that's creating, and kind of the fun around collectibles and what maybe the future of that could be, the expansion opportunities and all of that. Have told my kids about it, and maybe they're gonna have fun participating too. Anyway, and then the Xbox handheld, so don't sleep on, that's coming out here. I guess I'll betray my ignorance. I haven't, obviously that hasn't been as big of a discussion as the Switch 2. And so I'm not too sure what that means, but it's not a zero, right? And we know that GameStop is offering that. And so there's some revenue opportunity there. And now, obviously, again, with me having been in the past more about AMC, and I've tended to mean the following about that, but again, because I love all of retail, I'm going to say this for all of us: we will win. So let's go.